that's, look, as financial controller, you have sort of, you're effectively responsible for reporting FP&A and treasury again, which is what I've been doing, which I had experience in the past. And what I do on a day-to-day basis is quite interesting because we trade in commodities, we trade in metals, as I'm sure many people know here, given the current circumstances with Russia and Ukraine. Prices have shot through the roof, which means that the commercial acumen that you need to have is pretty high in our business. Effectively, you need to stay on top of the market prices. You need to understand what's going on. What does that mean to your liquidity in the business? What does that mean to your working capital, etc., etc. So it's I've had a great 10 years, basically, is what I would say overall. Very enjoyable, but I know it's very different to the previous speakers. Some of them, like I said.
But that's the great thing. It's just good to have a variety and just different perspectives and different insights.
Exactly, absolutely.
We've got a question from Andy. He said, "What skills did you leverage from audit to land the business partnering role?"
That's a tough one, because my key strength at the time when I was in audit was financial reporting. I was very good at IFRS 9. I was very good at IFRS 16. Well, IFRS 16 wasn't complex. I think what got me the role, if I'm being brutally honest, was the fact that I knew. So I focused on corporate banking when I was at PwC. So when I was working with Bank of America Merrill Lynch, there were two sides to the business: broker dealers and corporate banking. My focus was on corporate banking. That wasn't too complex, if I'm being brutally honest, to understand. At least it was far simpler than securitization and broker dealing. So that's effectively what I used: is understanding the business, talking to the people, talking to the guys, the credit officers who are basically issuing the loans, understanding how the deposits market work, etc. What services do the banks provide? How do they make money? How does the business work effectively? That's something I focused on a fair bit as well when I was at PwC, and that's what I used to effectively go into Fitch Rating, because at the time that's what they wanted to know. What do you know about banks? How do they make money? What's your understanding of it, etc. And that's those key sort of knowledge and skills were super important when I moved over to Fitch. Yeah.
Cool. And I feel like people sometimes confuse industry and commerce with financial services. Like, oh, I just want to go in-house. I don't care if it's financial services or industry and commerce. I just want to have an in-house role. What would you feel like you've learned from the FS route rather than like that differs to if you'd just gone straight into industry and commerce? What has it offered you that's different to what you would have had if you'd chosen another pathway?
I mean, for me, I knew I had a natural sort of interest in financial services from very early. Well, I wouldn't say early. During university, global financial crisis is when basically I finished university. So securing a job at the time was super difficult. And I remember seeing the headlines: Lehman Brothers went down. Sort of subprime mortgages completely all over the place. Insurance companies took massive hits because they were underwriting loans and other complex financial products. For me, I thought, well, that's I wanted to understand a bit more about that, basically. So that's what motivated me to go into financial services. And also the big headlines that you see in the news: JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, whether it's net income, losses, or fines that they're paying, we're talking about huge numbers. And we are also talking about a huge part of the UK economy. Everyone knows that. That's what kind of pushed me to go into financial services at first. And then slowly coming out of it, I think it was more, I'll be brutally honest, I mean, I came out, but then I was picked up by private equity because those guys knew that if you work in financial services, chances are you're probably sort of used to working long hours. You're probably used to stress and handling pressure, etc., and all the rest. And I slowly, but like I said, I came out of it. I work in commodity trading, which is kind of falls under financial services. But going forward in the future, I think I know that there are plenty of opportunities for me to move into sort of industry and commerce, whether it's software, retail, whatever it is. So, that's sort of been my trajectory. And I always focus on making sure that I'm working on myself. I always make sure that I can bring something to a business where I'm going in the next step, in the next sort of, the next move, effectively.
Yeah. So say someone who wanted to move into financial services, is there anything you think they can do whilst training, or who's just qualified, just to like expand their chance, increase their chances of making that move possible?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just look, I've always said sort of attitude is extremely important. Having the right mindset and having the right attitude, you're halfway there, basically. It's crucial. I mean, when I was applying to PwC, my knowledge of financial services wasn't that great. And in fact, when I started in the first few months, I had to manage teams and I had junior accountants who knew more about certain lines of services than I did, and it's because they had been there for a number of years and knew what was going on. So what can you do? Yes, of course, naturally you can brush up on it. You can sort of read up. I mean, there are plenty of sources out there that that are fantastic nowadays. I looked up on YouTube to understand certain lines of products for banking, quite frankly, because it was very simple. You had simplified videos that would explain exactly what repurchase agreements are. Fantastic, very easy, 2 minutes, and you understand how it works. So, if you have an interest, look into it, absolutely, research, understand how things work, and be able to explain that very in simple terms to whoever it is that you're going to be talking to. I think that would put you in a very strong position. And the other thing is, when you're there, you will find that you pick up so much because you're around it all the time. You do absorb it, and there are always people that are willing to teach you and coach you, etc. So you will pick up eventually.
Yeah. Well, what we do at Michael Page as well, obviously, where we've got so many different consultants covering all different parts of finance, I'll often book in calls with newly qualified people and particular people in the business. Yes. So say if someone wants to do corporate finance, I'll connect them to a corporate finance person. If they want financial services, and like have a conversation with my colleague, like Marianne, she's amazing. She can talk you through all the options. So it's kind of like part of my role is matchmaking people to other people who can kind of educate them on the options available to them. So I think like the education piece is so important. And I think also something that's come out of this is very much like being passionate about the culture of where you're going to move as well. And like, are you going to get on with the people that you're potentially going to be working with all the time?
Absolutely.
Yeah, another thing I also think is surprising too is like job specs don't always match the places. So you might look at a spec and be like, oh, wow, this looks incredible. And then you go to the office and you're like, or the other way around. It's just interesting.
Absolutely. I mean, look, when I came across that role in private equity, I had such low expectations, quite frankly. I knew, well, after meeting the people, I thought, okay, well, this is sounding a bit better, looking a bit better. But prior to that, my expectations were so low. And it's crazy to think that, like I said, of all the places I've worked so far, that place was fantastic. Yes, it didn't last very long. But having said that, having Bain Capital on my CV meant that I'd be brutally honest, my phone would constantly ring all the time because private equity houses know that when they see big names, they know what you've done, what you're capable of doing. The other thing is, I'll be brutally honest, if you're working in private equity, you're not performing, they are quite direct. There's not much office politics. If they don't like you, if they don't think you're a good fit, they know exactly. They will say, look, maybe this is not right for you, and you may have to move on, basically. So it is very. I found it extremely rewarding. I absolutely loved it, quite frankly. It's a very interesting sort of space to be in for sure, private equity. But like I said, after that, when you work with the likes of Bain Capital, then you'll have people like Carlyle Group, KKR, whoever the big names are, and everyone will want to see what you can do and bring to a business effectively. So it's I would highly recommend it. Basically, is what I would say.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for your time, Tom. If anyone has any questions for Tom in particular, feel free to write them now. I'm just going to speak a little bit about something that my team has created that might be able to give people more further information from what we've covered today. So we've created a newly qualified guide to success starter pack, and basically it covers all the different options. So practice route, industry and commerce, corporate finance, financial services, not-for-profit, what your first step into that space would look like, the kind of salaries you'd be looking at, CV tips, interview advice. It's got everything on there. How best to work with a recruiter, because obviously I know lots of newly qualified people get spammed all the time by people like me. So it's basically a how-to guide. So if you'd like to receive it, just feel free to contact me. It's oliviaschuler@michaelpage.com, and I can send it across to you. I'm just seeing if there's any questions, Tom. But to be honest, I feel like everything you said was really in depth, and it was really interesting having you here, because I know obviously some people who've spoken have had longer careers so far, but I think at the level you're at currently, it's really interesting to see the type of work you're doing and that kind of potential for progression 10 years in. So
I'm aware. I mean, I was listening to the previous speakers. I think my experience and my journey so far has been slightly different, I would say, for sure. But I think, commerce and industry is not something to be underestimated. The level of commercial acumen and sort of experience that you gain by working in these sectors is not something that I would have picked up in audits, for sure. It is true that as you move up, you take on more leadership skills and absolutely or leadership positions, I should say. But I'm very glad that I moved out of audit at the time that I did, and I managed to secure the roles that I have, basically. And I think, Liv, you're probably aware of this. I will be starting a new position as a group financial controller in about 3 months' time, and the reason for that is. Yeah, thank you. And the reason for that is because of what I've been doing for the last 5 to 6 years, effectively building on my CV, building on myself, adding value to wherever it is I'm going, and then taking that with me. So yeah, I don't think there should be any concerns about progression, for sure. Yeah.
Well, cool. Thank you for your time, Tom. And thank you to everyone who's joined us today. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to my team for helping me organise. Thank you to CASSL. And yeah, if anyone has any further questions or you want to receive the newly qualified pack, just contact me. I'll send an email out after this to everyone just to say thanks for joining us. And yeah, I hope everyone has a lovely evening. Yeah, see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.